Emotional scenes as the driver behind the fatal Hunter Valley bus crash is sentenced to decades in prison. Hello, I'm Amy Culpitt. This is Regional News. The link between regional towns and asthma. Could your location be making you sick? Life's anything but a drag. Broken Hill celebrates 30 years of Priscilla. And the race that stops the outback. All the colour from Birdsville. The man responsible for last year's Hunter Valley wedding tragedy has been sentenced to 32 years in jail. Bus driver Brett Button apologised in court to survivors and relatives of the 10 people killed in the horror crash. And a warning, this story contains images of Indigenous people who have died.
Survivors and family members of the people killed in Greta united in grief and relief. Some were surprised by the severity of the sentence given to bus driver Brett Button, 32 years with a non-parole period of 24.
There was shock and there was also relief and there were a lot of tears.
The result that they got was tremendous for us.
Before learning his fate, Brett Button was given the chance to speak in court. "I live with this every day and I hate myself." On the night of the crash, the bus driver told police he was going slow enough. Today, he accepted he was going too fast. "I take responsibility for the death and injuries. It was no way purposeful and I wasn't negligent. I'm sorry to everyone involved. I've shamed everyone." The 59-year-old also admitted to being under the influence of an opioid painkiller that night, even though doctors had warned him to limit its use. During his 3 days in the dock, Button hung his head, looking like a broken man. Just metres away were victims' families and survivors who hugged and cried when his sentence was handed down. The judge considered 40 victim impact statements and said in his 50 years in the justice system he had never dealt with a case that contained anywhere near the devastation.
It will never bring back my beautiful sister Nadine. It will never bring back my sassy niece Kaya.
I think nothing will bring them back, but I think ultimately it shows that they mattered.
Now a new stage of the grieving process can begin. Giselle Wakatama, ABC News, Newcastle.
New research has identified more than 400 asthma hotspots in Australia, with a prevalence of the disease in disadvantaged regional areas. Researchers say environmental factors and limited access to healthcare could be contributing to the trend.
Catching a simple cold can be life-threatening for 10-year-old Oakley Elliott.
First, I get a cough and I get tired in the chest and I struggle to breathe. And I feel scared because I don't want to go to hospital.
Oakley has a severe form of asthma. She and her mum have to travel regularly from their home in Albury in southern New South Wales to Sydney for treatment.
She's had 11 weeks off school this year, which is more than a term, which is a bit of a concern.
Albury is one of hundreds of asthma hotspots identified in new research from the University of New South Wales. The study is based on census data and confirms higher rates of childhood asthma in poorer postcodes.
So majority of the hotspots, more than 60%, were in socio-economically disadvantaged area.
Researchers say 84% of the hotspots also have an above average Indigenous population. The study doesn't shed any light on why there are higher rates of asthma in these hotspot areas, but researchers say asthma is often linked to higher levels of pollution, cramped housing, smoking and lower education levels. Asthma Australia says there are things concerned parents can do to manage symptoms, like reviewing medication with a doctor, using air filters, cleaning up dust and mould straight away, and minimising the use of gas for cooking and heating.
Just because you live in a hotspot area doesn't mean that there's nothing to do or that your outcomes are written in stone.
For Oakley Elliott, the best outcome would be easier access to treatment.
a person that can look after kids with asthma in Albury.
Until then, the Elliott family say they'll continue to rely on charities to help fund their travel to Sydney. Stephen Schubert, ABC News.
The announcement of the upcoming closure of Tasmania's King Island dairy has sent shockwaves through the isolated Bass Strait community. But locals have become accustomed to sudden change and they remain hopeful that a new buyer can be found.
John Smith has seen a lot of changes on King Island over his 3 decades as a publican.
Okay, see if it basket, that's all.
He knows just how hard next year's closure of the King Island dairy will hit the isolated community.
With this another major factory closing down, it's going to cause a lot of ripples in the community, a lot of ripples.
The closure of the island's abattoirs a decade ago was a major blow before golf tourism offered a lifeline.
In fact, it wasn't until the golf courses started that morale started picking up. So this has just been another kick in the rear, really.
The decision of the dairy's owner, Canada-based multinational Saputo, will leave about 60 workers out of a job. That will have flow-on effects through the community.
We'll lose school teachers, we'll lose truck drivers, we'll lose people out of businesses, and so it won't be just the people who lose their jobs at the dairy.
Saputo says it spent 10 months looking for a buyer, but the ABC understands it had no offers. The company described its King Island brand as nostalgic, but said it hadn't stayed competitive. This hasn't convinced locals.
I see that Saputo have said that the brand was old and used by date and all that sort of thing, which is a load of rubbish.
Over the years, the island's farms have increasingly converted from dairies to raising beef cattle.
If the price comes off here with beef, like I said, there's no alternative. Well, what's the island going to do? It can't be just completely all golf.
No matter the answer, locals just want certainty for the future.
We just got off a high with the local grand final last week. There's the netball finals happening this week. So there's still a little bit of vibrance around the island and that sort of thing. But this certainly put a big damper on a lot of the moving forward.
Meg Powell, ABC News, King Island.
The Coalition has told a farmers' rally in Canberra it will overturn a ban on live sheep exports by sea as a priority if it's re-elected. Hundreds of farmers gathered on the lawns outside Parliament House for the rally, sparked by the federal government's decision to phase out the trade by May 2028. The ban will mostly affect West Australian farmers who've started a campaign called Keep the Sheep to put pressure on Labor in the lead-up to the next election.
The reason why you are here today, the reason why I am here today is because we feel like we are getting stiffed.
I'm going to give you a commitment right here today. The first bill that I bring back to Parliament as the next Agriculture Minister is to repeal the live sheep export ban out of Western Australia.
Australian crop farmers spend around $3.3 billion annually managing weeds, and herbicide resistance is a growing problem. But one SA farming family's invention is helping to make some of the country's worst weeds a problem of the past.
While weeds are a pain in our backyards, on farms they're a nightmare. An arsenal of chemicals, insects and even controlled burns can help, but some of the most pervasive weeds have become resistant to herbicides.
The herbicide resistance of weeds is a well-known fact, but there's nothing resistant to Australian steel.
Kangaroo Island farmer and engineer Dr Nick Berry set his mind to creating a different solution, a weed-destroying machine. It sits at the back of the harvester, and internal rotating steel hammers spin at up to 3,000 revolutions per minute, killing annual ryegrass, wild radish, wild oats and brome grass seeds.
We direct all of the chaff and the weed seeds into those shoots, put it through the seed terminator and smash the bejesus out of it and spread it back on the soil.
Researchers say the innovative technology has an added benefit of protecting farmland.
We've had other practices where farmers have burnt their weed seeds and straw, and of course what that does is it leaves the soil bare, and you've got opportunities then for erosion over the summertime.
The family business has received a $3.1 million grant from the federal government to export into European and North American markets.
Manufacturing creates secure, well-paying jobs That's why we're backing it. It's important that Australia's a country that makes things.
Mr Ashenden says it's been rewarding to see their product help the farming community.
They are saving time, they are saving money, and they're leaving their land in a better place than what it was before.
The seed of an idea now going global. Sophie Landau, ABC News.
A group of parents in regional Victoria have come together to try and delay their children's exposure to mobile phone use. They've made a phone pledge not to give their kids smartphones until they're 16.
Bouncing on the trampoline with friends and playing with a football are the kinds of experiences these mums want their kids to remember.
I would like my children to have a childhood for as long as they possibly can. The statistics for mental health issues in teenagers and kids are pretty concerning for me.
Emma and Kate are just two of hundreds of parents in the Murray River towns of Echuca Moama pledging to keep smartphones out of their children's hands for as long as possible. Stephanie Chalice came up with the idea to empower parents to take collective action against tech giants.
We're saying 16 at a minimum. All the research that's come out very, very recently has said that it's not good for kids' brains before 16.
The mum of two started the movement because she realised it would be too hard to tackle the issue alone.
There are growing calls around Australia on both sides of politics for tighter restrictions around children using social media. But some mental health experts say teenagers need to be part of the conversation.
What the kids are telling us is don't ban us, teach us. Don't take it away from us because maybe you don't know how to use it or you're scared of what is going to happen when I use it. Teach me how to use it properly.
You can't really communicate with your friends, so you'd have to call them at a telephone box or something because you won't be able to message them on Snapchat.
I reckon it's about a 50-50, I'd say, yeah. Bad stuff can be really bad, but when it's good, it's nice.
The federal government has promised to introduce legislated social media age limits, but these parents don't want to wait. Rachel Clayton, ABC News, Echuca.
Australians love to dream about and build their own homes, but what's often ignored is what happens when these buildings and the materials inside are no longer deemed useful. One regional Victorian company is out to change that.
On the outskirts of Castlemaine, a treasure trove of materials salvaged from old buildings lies waiting for a new life. Business owners Matt and Anna have spent decades building with and selling second-hand construction materials.
We've become such a kind of throwaway world that and the stuff we're throwing away is quite often awesome and better quality than what we've got now.
They want to inspire others to reduce waste by reusing what's available.
What we're constantly trying to do is impart our creative thinking onto other people that may not be able to see it or inherently value that resource.
Developing a greener construction industry is seen as key to reducing Australia's carbon emissions and landfill.
In fact, around 18 to 20% of emissions are generated by our sector, by construction sector, and about 40% of the total landfill comes from construction waste.
And while reusing existing materials is a good start, Dr. Kodja-Turk says the industry needs to change its thinking.
When we design new buildings, we would be ideally not design them for one life cycle in mind. Imagine a building which is designed to be disassembled and dismantled so that its different materials and parts could be used in future constructions, for example.
Builder and engineer Quentin Irvine tried to achieve that in a house near Ballarat.
So it was all that kind of big picture stuff that we achieved. There's probably a good sort of 10% of that building that's not really recyclable.
He says a major challenge is the common use of composite materials containing glues and plastics, which often can't be reprocessed into new products later on.
Yeah, people generally, when they think about houses, think that houses are going to last forever, and I'm here to bring the bad news that they're not going to last forever.
Using the past to build a better future. Rhiannon Stevens, ABC News, Ballarat.
An insect previously unknown to science has been uncovered in a top-end national park. A new variety of ghost wasp has been found near a popular swimming hole in what one leading wasp expert is calling a mind-blowing discovery.
As dusk approaches at Leyland, Edith Falls, about 2 hours south of Darwin, Lucina and Nick are looking for bugs.
Oh, there's trapdoor nests here. Oh, really? Yeah.
So the subtropics, all the savannas up here are just amazing. It's one of the most extensive and intact ecosystems actually in the entire world.
It was on a recent trip here that the pair made a groundbreaking find.
Most people assume that we already know everything about the biodiversity and the natural world around us, but it couldn't be further from the truth.
This is what they found. A member of the Gasteroption genus of wasps, sometimes called ghost wasps for their zigzag hovering.
Such an elegant looking wasp.
So pretty.
They've worked with Jawoyn traditional owners to come up with a name.
It's called the Mambodamal wasp.
They sent samples to a leading expert on native Australian wasps.
As soon as I saw it, I knew it was something undescribed, something new. It's really distinctive compared to the rest of the Australian species, and it just blew my mind as soon as I saw it.
The wasp parasitises a native Australian bee by laying eggs in the bee's nest. Dr. Parslow says the find will shed new light on these unique host relationships.
It helps us begin to understand how these groups can occur together, but also how they've evolved.
It's good to have species out there on the ledger so that we know what has been affected, what are we losing, so we can value it and make better decisions going forward.
They're taking their discovery on the road.
I wake up, I think about bugs, I go back to sleep, I dream about bugs.
Hoping their fixation will inspire the next citizen scientists.
These kids have so much biodiversity at their front doorstep just waiting to be discovered.
A hidden world ready to explore.
Oh, very good, you found a wasp.
James Elton, ABC News, Katherine.
A country town in Western Australia has become a social media hit with help from a travel influencer. Traditional cultural practices have triggered the unlikely connection, with the farming community now a destination of choice for Malaysian tourists.
Katanning is a small farming town in WA's Great Southern region. In Malaysia, it is gaining a reputation for so much more.
If I go to Katanning, I feel like I just go back to my hometown 40 years ago. Sini yang paling best kali di Katanning, daily grind coffee.
Videos presented by Malaysian YouTuber Saiful Nang about visiting Katanning have attracted more than 1 million views.
You know, it's quite strange. We are, Malaysian Malay, and we have to go to Katanning to embrace the old Malay culture where people work together hand in hand.
The hand-in-hand step-back in time cultural experience is attracting a new kind of tourist to the region.
It's been an influx of Asian tourists, especially from Malaysia. They have found out that there are Malays that live in Katanning for the past 50 years. We asked them, how do you know about Katanning? Oh, we saw on YouTube.
When Alep Mahdi is not working at his cafe, he serves as the imam at the local mosque. The mosque was built here in 1980 and continues to be a focal point for a growing Muslim community. Katanning is now home to over 50 language groups, and that's helped attract visitors from all over the world.
I think visitors being able to see a mosque in such a rural setting is really unique and special.
Long-term expatriates are happy to welcome increasing numbers of immigrants.
They feel like family there. They're very warm.
And that warmth has enticed this YouTuber to visit 12 times. He's planning his 13th trip next year with 60 Malaysian students in tow. Sophie Johnson, ABC News, Katanning.
The Northern Territory isn't short on dangerous creatures, saltwater crocs, deadly jellyfish and plenty of poisonous creepy crawlies. But one of Darwin's most popular swimming spots, Lake Alexander, has now been closed thanks to a reported shark sighting. Our reporter Olivana Lathoris went down to the waterhole to investigate the rumours of the Loch Alexander monster for herself.
Amy, Lake Alexander is a popular spot for picnicking, stand-up paddleboarding and swimming. And generally, it's one of the safer options for somewhere to cool down. But Lake Alexander has been closed after Darwin City Council received reports of a shark sighting. While the chances of a shark making its way into a lake may seem unlikely, this isn't the first time something like this has happened here. In December just last year, the lake was closed for the very same reason. And 2 years ago, in 2022, the lake was shut for 2 weeks also due to a shark sighting. In the end, all council were able to find were milkfish and barramundi, which can grow well in excess of 1 metre. So perhaps this is just another case of mistaken identity. Or is it something more sinister? Back in 2009, a woman was reportedly attacked by an unidentified sea creature, earning the name the Loch Alexander monster. So, is it a fish, is it a shark, or is it a creature from the deep? Well, time will tell. Darwin City Council is working alongside NT Fisheries to search the water, with visitors being urged to stay on dry land until those reports can be verified. That hasn't stopped everybody, with some people succumbing to the temptation of that beautiful blue water. But for anybody looking to escape the sweltering Darwin heat, for now the safest option is probably your local swimming pool. Amy?
It's now been 3 decades since a bus called Priscilla drove through the outback and onto our screens into Australian hearts. This weekend, drag queens from around the nation are celebrating the film's 30th anniversary at the Broken Heel Festival in Broken Hill.
They're like weapons.
They are dangerous.
Amanda Screetley is living her childhood dream of performing in drag across the country.
Oh, that works really well, actually.
Amanda, aka Tom Henderson, grew up between Burke and Wilcannia on a working station as one of 4 boys. But after watching Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, life was never the same.
It made it not a thing that happened in the cities or something that happened overseas or something like that. It was like, people like that are here and I can be like that here. That was a pretty big important part of it for me.
Scenes of the main street and the Palace Hotel put Broken Hill in the spotlight, with the outback city embracing this fame in recent years alongside all things Priscilla.
In 1994, that was the only movie that I ever saw that was queer.
You know, being belted up by cops and whatever, I could identify with it.
After almost a decade, this year's Broken Hill Festival is being billed as the last, so organisers can turn their attention to other projects. And 30 years on from the film's release, some are asking whether the film still holds up, particularly the way it depicts gender and race.
I love the fact that the film puts our trans brothers and sisters and family right at the centre of our queer community. If you were doing that now, would you cast a cis man to play that trans character? No, you wouldn't. We've learned how to do better.
Whatever its flaws, Priscilla still holds a special place in Amanda's heart.
There are still kids out there who are finding it and realising how big their community is. I think that's like why it's still relevant today.
And with a sequel now in the works, it's time to get ready for another adventure. Kokahala Connor, ABC News, Broken Hill.
Artists from remote desert communities across the Northern Territory, South Australia and Western Australia have come together for one of the nation's oldest Aboriginal art festivals. Desert Mob celebrates desert culture and the work produced at more than 30 art centres.
Opening a curtain into the central desert, a dazzling artwork that's been years in the making.
I've been working hard to collecting all the nuts.
Thousands of gum nuts meticulously painted and threaded by artists from Haas Bluff, Ekunji, showing off the natural beauty of the remote community west of Alice Springs.
As you can see, and visitors will see, the works sort of speak for themselves. It's a really powerful expression of desert culture.
Now in its 33rd year, Desert Mob brings together hundreds of Indigenous artists from across the Northern Territory, South Australia and Western Australia. Their work is deeply personal and varied, both in material and style, from dot paintings to wood carvings and pottery.
Pottery is inspiration to our heart, and doing our lifestyle, telling the history, our pot will be there forever for our history.
Thousands of art collectors and enthusiasts are drawn to Alice Springs each year, with the festival gaining a reputation for launching the careers of emerging artists and supporting the industry's development.
It's so important that people get to see their art on the wall and be celebrated in a kind of like local context, as opposed to like in Sydney or Melbourne.
With the younger artists and the more senior artists represented here, again, it just bodes well for the future. You know, that legacy is pretty much assured.
growing from strength to strength in the cultural heart of the nation. Lee Robinson, ABC News, Alice Springs.
Thousands of racegoers have braved the heat and dust to be trackside at the Birdsville Races. Crowd sizes are down from record highs pre-COVID, but that hasn't stopped punters from putting on a party on the edge of the Simpson Desert.
It's the race that stops the outback. Some punters are rejoicing in the win. Yeah, had a pretty good day, eh? Come down here, sunk a couple of middies and won 280 there. So a good win there, I suppose. Others are just happy to make the long journey to Birdsville.
We had 4 flats along the way, absolutely shredded our tyres.
A group of travellers from Longreach finally reached their destination after a 13-hour road trip gone wrong.
Spirits are high, we're ready to go.
Crowd numbers have been down in recent years as people feel their purse strings tightening.
There's no doubt that the cost of living is biting with interest rates and the cost of fuel. There's not many events where people will travel so far.
But for those who did make the trek, there was no expense spared for fashions on the field. Events like this keep Birdsville's small businesses alive, but a slow tourist season has taken its toll.
It's affected us, our business, hugely. If the numbers drop anymore, you know what I mean? Like, it's a bit scary.
It's not only crowd numbers down from their peak pre-COVID.
The number of entrants were probably down a bit this year. We'd certainly like to see greater numbers in races.
71 horses competed across 13 races this year, with some only attracting a field of 4. Industry insiders say it's becoming increasingly expensive to send their prized thoroughbreds to the outback. Despite the challenges, it's still a once-in-a-lifetime spectacle.
From the moment we left, the experiences along the way was a huge highlight to making our way here. And then as soon as we got here, everyone's here to have a really good time.
The party on the edge of the Simpson Desert has only just begun. Peter Quattrochelli, ABC News, Birdsville.
The Robe River Rodeo has celebrated its 29th anniversary with thousands travelling from across the country to the small town of Pannawonica in WA's far north. Cowboys and cowgirls don their hats, boots and ringer shirts for a day of bull riding, barrel racing and steer wrestling. It is considered the largest rodeo event in the Pilbara. It was the first time at a rodeo for some, while others decided to brave an attempt at riding a bull.
When you're in there, you're just focusing on your breathing. Looking at the top of the bull, not really anywhere else. You look at the ground, you probably end up on the ground quickly. I reckon I went pretty good for my first time. I managed 2 seconds maybe. When you come out, you're just walking around, you're high on life, I guess, for the next 20 minutes.
And that's the latest regional news. I'm Amy Culpitt. Thanks for your company. We'll see you next time.